Okay, the research that I'm presenting today is based on my work, which is Holographic Culture. And this book really looks at the extraterrestrial phenomenon and argues that this phenomenon is ancient in its origins. So today I'm going to be discussing ancient aliens and flying saucers. And we're going to be going into the symbolism, and particularly the comparisons to flying saucers. So I'm going to be contending today that this is a very ancient phenomenon. So I'm going to look at the controversial possibility that the aliens are not passive observers, but instead have infiltrated human life and are an intrinsic part of the fibre of society. So I'm going to actually say that they actually coexist in well, they coexist and live amongst us in what I would define as a parallel society. So the implications regarding alien intrusion is a staggering argument, and for the most part is hardly ever entertained within modern ufology. So I think a lot of people who study ufology just say, well, this is a crazy idea. But I think it's an hypothesis which is really worthy of study. Particularly when you get into the ancient symbolism, the idea that aliens are interacting and engaging with human beings becomes a very credible theory. So first of all, the lecture has looked into Scafology. This is a word that I've come up with, scaph coming from the Greek root meaning a boat or a vessel. So it's the study of angelic vessels within the classical world. And this study is actually missing. It's a redacted tradition. It is a classical tradition. It is classified. As I said before, the word classical denotes something denoting the navy or naval. And as I said before, all these signifiers all refer to this angelic lineage, this lineage which has been concealed throughout history. So we mentioned then in the introduction that the classical tradition is an edited or a classified version of history and relates specifically to a concealed angelic lineage. Now the progeny describes a parallel society, one that coexists side by side with human society. And as I said before, it's reflected in government. Gubernatios to navigate a boat. So there is this parallel society, and Plutarch himself alludes to this parallel society in his biography, Parallel Lives. So angelic, this civilization, and as I said before, the word angelic also means alien, so let's not get confused with this language. So angelic, this civilization runs symmetrical and is at the heart of religion and culture. A political control structure, this contingent traditionally interacts or mediates with angels. Furthermore, the Skaphological tradition is veiled behind symbolism in which much of history is based upon an allegorical tradition, allosagoria, or the talking, and the allegories likewise are historical. So sometimes something which is depicted as historical is allegorical, and vice versa. Now, according to Plutarch, this parallel column is represented as an offspring of a boat. As I showed with Diogenes, his name means a separate race. He is depicted with a barrel. The barrel is used to denote an angelic vessel within the arcane tradition. It's very similar to a type of lamp, which in the Arabian traditions is correlated with the jinn. So the term is used to distinguish an angelic lineage, one which is separate or collateral to humanity. So the encodings, as I said before, are encoded within government. Now, the fact that the visitors live amongst us have impacted human life, and if we look at the evidence, the collision between the two groups has, for the most part, been very negative or at the very least problematic. So in the lecture, I've also shown that the question whether aliens exist becomes a meaningless and obsolete argument when reviewed in context to the historical data and shows a lack of critical discrimination. Rather, the main contention of the debate is not so much whether aliens are visiting Earth, but how much influence are non-human entities exerting over human lives. I think this is a very critical question. It's also important to note that we cannot have a full understanding of the UFO problem without factoring in the occult or parallel tradition, and I think that this has sadly been lacking within ufology, and so far, therefore, our understanding of ufology has been very limited. As I've argued before, it's encoded in languages, but it's not just encoded within one single language, it's encoded in multiple languages. So we need to look at the UFO problem. We also need to look at it from a linguistic perspective. And it can be argued that ufology in general has been very unsuccessful at, or limited in its search for meaningful answers, and is in part due to a lack of understanding or neglect concerning the Skaphological tradition. In other words, this is the missing piece to the puzzle. The Skaphological tradition does not exist within classics, and yet classics is all about naval vessels. So what is classics? No one's talking about these vessels. People might talk about angels, but they never mentioned the word vessel. Now, according to the clues within the classical record, the government, more specifically aspects of the government, are alien and consist of a parallel column. Confidential, the lid on this secret has been firmly placed, or should we say hermetically sealed, for thousands of years. Classified, this secret is the cause behind many of the wars that have been fought amongst men, including religious and political intolerance. Complete exposure will not come from the government, because the government are a part of this, and they've been concealing this information for thousands of years. So if we look into human history, we have also already seen that we've had limited admission. And I call this, I call this partial disclosure. And this partial disclosure is thousands of years old, and it's there concealed within the symbolism, within the languages that we all speak. Fragmentary or incomplete partial disclosure is ancient and dates from when the records of man began. Encrypted, these revelations are veiled behind occult symbolism and are classified by the state. In other words, the term classified would have this connotation of this alien or angelic vessel. And I just want to finish on the final point then. So in conclusion then, there exists a political apartheid between the angelic offspring of the children of humanity, an inequality that is still being played out on the world stage. The final hurdle then is to reunite our species, to live in peace together, and to create a fair and just society in which the children of mankind can flourish. Ultimately, to take our rightful place with the gods as co-creators and equal participants, which we, of course, are not, on this beautiful blue planet we call our home. Thank you very much.